Hello Pixies, and welcome to or back to my channel. It's Zoe here, and today I have my end of the year TBR. Yesterday the book tag went up of the end of the year book tag, and I said that I would more so go over the books I really want to read before the end of the year here. So that is what today's video is. This is a fairly small TBR because these are basically just books that I want to be reading in December. I'm just not limiting it to, like, these are the only books I'm going to be reading in December, but these are the core books I really want to read this month. One of these books might end up being in November because I still am in November, and I have started a reading vlog where I would like to read that book, so that one might get read a little sooner than December, so I'm sorry about that. But this is a fairly short list in general because this is for the end of the year. On here total is 8 books, but one of them is basically a series that I really would like to finish before the end of the year. But other than that, so we're only going to really be talking about 5 books in this video. I have my little list pulled up. The first book on this list is Silver and the Bone by Alexandra Bracken. Yeah, Alexandra Bracken. And this is a retelling, I believe, of King Arthur. And this is the same author who wrote Lore, which I also own and just haven't read yet for whatever reason. So Silver and the Bone takes place in our world, but there is also a magical underworld, quote unquote, type world, like a secret magical society and world of magical people that regular people don't know that exist. And in this book we follow Tamsin, and Tamsin doesn't have a lick of magic in her, but when her guardian goes missing, she has to take care of herself and her younger brother, and she decides to do so by joining up with some of these magical people, I believe, and finding magical objects so she can keep herself and her sibling alive and safe. But then 10 years later, there's rumors that her guardian had found a powerful ring from Arthurian legend before he vanished. And she believes that this ring could free her younger brother from a curse that threatens both of them, but they aren't the only ones who want the ring. And that's kind of all I know about it. And I did have to read a little bit off, like, the description, because, like, it just, as soon as I look at it, it just, like, pops out of my head, to be completely honest. But, like, the Arthurian legend part intrigues me enough to want to read it, and every single time I read the description, I'm like, wow, that sounds really interesting. It just doesn't stick in my brain. But for some reason, I don't know if it's, like, the colors of the book cover, or this magical vibe, or the Boston vibe that just makes me think, oh, this is kind of wintry, that makes me think I should read it in the winter. I have no idea if it's set in the winter. For all I know, it could be set in the dead summer. But I would just really like to read it this month in December. I got this book actually last year for Christmas, and I know the second one's out. I'm unsure if it's a duology or if it's going to be a longer series, so I would really like to read this one. So if I really like it and I would like to continue on with the series, I can get the hardcover of the next book, because if I am going to own a series, I would like them all to match, to be completely honest. Next up is the book that I actually might end up reading, like, right now when I'm filming it, in the end of November instead of December, so I'm sorry if that offends you. But this is a fantasy middle grade titled Snow and Rose by Emily Winifred Martin. And this is a retelling of, I don't know if it's a retelling of it's a retelling of Snow White and Rose Red, which is actually my favorite fairy tale ever. I love that fairy tale, and that one never gets adapted. The description of this book says, I'm just going to read itself because it's very short, and it doesn't really tell much about what's going to happen in the story, which is good because the book is fairly short. And it says, once they lived in a big house with spectacular gardens and an army of servants. Once they had a father and mother who loved them more than the sun and the moon. But that was before their father disappeared into the woods and their mother disappeared into sorrow. This is a story of 2 sisters in the enchanted woods that have been waiting for them to break a set of terrible spells. I always love a magical middle grade, and I have really high hopes for this one because it is a retelling of Snow White and Rose Red, but it is also still middle grade, so it's not like the kind of retelling I've kind of gotten used to in this kind of genre. So I'm excited to see like what changes about this book because I'm still expecting it to be very fairy tale-esque based off of the description. I might be reading this one sooner than December, but it is a book I want to read before the end of the year. It's been a book that's been on my TBR for a long time, and I keep wanting to read it. I just haven't yet. And that is the conundrum of a book lover now, isn't it? The next book is the series that I was talking about. I have read the first book. I haven't read the second book, which is what finishes the duology, but then there's also a prequel. And that series is the Six Crimson Cranes. So I have read Six Crimson Cranes. I have not read The Dragon's Promise or Her Radiant Curse. So Six Crimson Cranes, we follow our main character, and she has magic which she isn't really supposed to have. And usually she's pretty good about keeping it under control or doing it when she's only alone. But then on the day of her betrothal ceremony, I believe, or maybe it's her marriage ceremony, I don't quite remember, it gets unleashed. And while this makes her kind of happy because this ceremony has been pushed off because of this, she gains the attention of her stepmother, who is a sorceress in her own right. And because of everything that happens, she is then cursed, cast out of the kingdom. Her brothers are turned into six crimson cranes, and if she speaks, then one of her brothers may die. And there's like a whole lot of other things going on. This is like a reimagining of, I believe it's called The Wild Swans. It's, you know, a classic German fairy tale, but then it's given a twist by combining other elements from Asian mythology, including the legend of Chong-yi and the tale of the bamboo cutter, and it also kind of has a Cinderella-esque vibe. I really loved Six Crimson Cranes, and I read it when it first came out, so I feel like I need to reread it to get a refresher because it's been multiple years since I read it. So then I can continue on with The Dragon's Promise, and then go back and read the prequel, Her Radiant Curse. If I had never read Six Crimson Cranes, maybe I would start with Her Radiant Curse, but since I've already read Six Crimson Cranes, I would rather read that one first, then continue on to the end of the duology with The Dragon's Promise, and then go back to Her Radiant Curse. And Her Radiant Curse is actually the last book I have on my list for my 2024 TBR, so I really, really want to read it before the end of the year because I would like to check it off on my list, like completely. Like I just want it to be like, oh yeah, I did a good job this year. Next up, I have a book that I've been saving all year to read in the winter, and that is The Raven and the Reindeer by T. Kingfisher. I've never heard anyone actually talk about this book by T. Kingfisher, but it really caught my attention because it's about a girl named Greta. This book is about a girl named Greta, and she has a friend named Kay, but then Kay is stolen away by the Snow Queen, and it's up to Greta to find him. So she'll go through this dangerous land, and it's snowy, it's got witchcraft, and she's only accompanied by a bandit and a talking raven, and that's kind of all I know about it. I think I read the first page when I got it last year for Christmas, but I never continued on. I think I was just reading because I was really intrigued by it. And I believe this is a retelling of the Snow Queen, which is why there is a Snow Queen. And the Snow Queen is a Nordic fairy tale, and it was the original premise of the movie Frozen, but I think they moved a lot away from that because I know there's a magic mirror element, and the Snow Queen's supposed to be evil. I'm really intrigued by this one. It's fairly short as well. Like, it's more like a novella than an actual book, so I have no doubt in my mind that I can actually read this. I think I can also sneak this book into like a holiday book vlog because it is so wintry and cold and magical feeling that I feel like it wouldn't really be out of place even though it isn't specifically holiday. The final book of the video, which is Kingdom of Ash and Briars by Hannah West. And in this book, we follow Bristol, and she is a kitchen maid, and she has been orphaned her entire life, but then she learns she's an electromancer and a shapeshifter. I have no idea what an electromancer is. I think it's specific to this book and to this book series, so I guess we'll learn inside the book. And these are an ancient kind of immortal beings, and there's barely any of them left after war in this realm. And they're supposed to be really take on a lot of responsibility, but she has to choose between two paths. Like, should she like try to take on these responsibilities and do good by the people of this world, or should she fall into her power and do what she wants and what she thinks would be good for her, I believe. It just seems like it was stepping into like this fairy tale world like many of us so wish would happen to us, to be completely honest. And I just found the concept to be very, very interesting. And because of her shape-shifting powers, about how this is going to affect her journey and her interactions with other people, especially since she is one of the last of the electromancers. And it says it's building on homages to Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Jane Austen's Emma, and the Chinese legend of Mulan. Yeah. So, like, it's combining a lot of things. It said this is a young adult fantasy, if I didn't already tell that. It says it's got romance, it's got magic. What else could I want? I want all the fairy tale vibes this December, if this wasn't obvious. I heard no one talk about this book, but I'm hoping to really find a hidden gem and possibly a new favorite. And with that, those are all the books I want to read before the year ends. I really hope I can do it all. 8 books might seem like a lot for 4 weeks, but I believe I can do it if I try. And 2 of them are pretty short. And while I do own the second book to The Kingdom of Ash and Briars, I'm not necessarily putting it on the end of the year TBR, I'm just putting the first one on. So it's 8 books total. Maybe I can do it, maybe I can't, but I'm gonna try my best to do it. And yeah, that's kind of it. Leave down in the comments below any books that you want to read before the end of the year, or if you have any commentary about the books that I talked about, I would love to chat with you. And give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. I would really appreciate it. And also, if you want, you can subscribe. I will be posting an awful lot this month in December, so you might not want to miss out if you liked this video. I guess that's it. So I guess I'm signing off now. Okay, bye.